Well, hello everyone, and welcome to your Saturday or Sunday or maybe Friday night, depending where you are in the world. I guess I think it's pretty well Saturday for almost everybody, if I'm not mistaken. But what do I know about time zones? Despite the fact that they play a big role in what I do on YouTube because it's always coordinating time zones between where you are and where your guests are. But in any case, happy day wherever you are. It is very snowy here in Barrie, about an hour north of the great city of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. And it is the perfect day to stay inside, curl up. And hey, I thought make a video. I'll go live, make a video. Why not? Just I think this was definitely. Um, I'll blame two people for this video. One is my lovely wife, Debbie, my business manager, my partner. I love you, babes, if you end up watching this. Um, and the other one was my awesome colleague, made between the pages, my partner over at Page Chewing, and both of them prompted me to after they saw just my reaction, just my joy, um, all of the emotions that were brought out by reading the finale of The Blood Sworn by John Gwynne, namely Fury of the Gods. They were like, "Hey, why don't you make a video about John Gwynne's books and you love them and how you feel about them?" And great idea, of course, smarter than anything that I would have come up for by both of them. So yeah, I decided, you know what? I think it's time. I've now read all 10 books that are published by John Gwynne, all 10 of his novels. So that big empty space on my bookshelf behind me, that's where his novels reside, in a place of honor, because he is one of my favorite fantasy authors. John Gwynne is just exceptional. And from everything that I've seen, also an amazing human being. I can definitely say that his sons are fabulous people. And I've had the privilege of speaking to them on Page Chewing with Taylor, hopefully to have both of them, the brothers Gwynne, Will and Ed, amazing booktubers themselves. Check out the channels. Hope to have them back on Page Chewing with Taylor and I at some point in the new year, God willing. But so this video is about, now that I have read all 10 books by John Gwynne, and of course he is, as I said, firmly established as one of my favorite fantasy authors, I thought it would be time to provide my, of course, subjective and unexpert ranking of the books that I've read by him, all 10. And again, there's so many things that make this author special. I hope I highlight some of them as I go over why I've decided to rank each book where it is. But it's not so much a ranking. I mean, as you know, with an author that has the standard of excellence, and whose book I enjoy all of them. You're talking that you're almost nitpicking. You're talking by infinitesimal degrees, of which one book could prefer one book over another. Like they're all amazing books. So sometimes the ranking stuff, seems disingenuous. But you know what? I thought I would give it a shot, because just perhaps for those who haven't read John Gwynne but heard a lot about him, and I'm wondering, hey, I want to check this out. Well, first of all, again, I will say that he is a phenomenal author. I love all of his books. I plan to read everything he writes. He's a must-buy author. And now he has quite the body of work that I believe a reader who wants to pick up a writer with a substantive number of books that you can really delve into, that has multiple series. Well, now John Gwynne has that, right? So he has his 3 major series, and they're all phenomenal. So what I did, it's a mix of all 3 series and all 10 books. So again, there's the order. When I'm ranking these, once more I'll say, this is by degrees, right? This is not because all of these books are not amazing. So I'll get right into it, and I will start with, on the list, number 10 in my ranking. And number 10 is A Time of Dread. So, A Time of Dread, and the covers. I mean, I love covers like this with a central main image that is just done up brilliantly. I really, really, really love this cover with the burning sword. So this is wow, another fantastic book, and it seemed a shame to have to put any John Gwynne book at the bottom of a ranking. But yeah, this is number 10, A Time of Dread. This is the A Blood and Bone book 1 in the Blood and Bone series. This novel, first let me just talk about it in general. It feels like it was the closest of all Gwynne's books, and maybe it was just at the time I read it. Of course, I've read it a while ago now, but at the time I had read it, it felt the closest of all his books previously that was in that real grim, dark milieu, like that. Yes, John Gwynne's fantasy was always dark. I understood that from reading the first book, Malice, in the previous series to this. But I just felt that this dialed into that grim, dark, that gritty, type of fantasy that I really love. And I love the darkness tone in this. And there's almost a cosmic horror feeling to it. And some of the creatures that we get to meet and are introduced to in this book and the start of this series are absolutely frightening. And there's so many elements of this book that I love, from things like there's an ancient meteor that shows up. There's, I'm trying not to provide spoilers here. There's an aspect of the book where one of the main characters, Drem, is in this really bitterly cold northern climate, and it just left an impression on me. It was just, indelible in my brain, just the way Gwynne did such a great job in describing this harsh, freezing northern world that I was shivering, almost when I was reading it. So, but this is a fabulous book. Again, it's, it feels like you're nitpicking when you rank these books, but A Time of Dread was amazing. But for whatever reasons, of all my John Gwynne books, I would put this at number 10. And again, there is nothing wrong with this book. It's extremely well written. It is awesome. I just think that it didn't leave the impact on me as some of the other books did, despite the fact that, hey, this is the first book in a new series, and everybody was really hungry after Faith of the Fallen to see what John Gwynne would write next. And this was the next series set in the same universe. But yeah, in any case, this comes in at number 10. At number 9, same series, A Time of Blood. And this is number 9. I feel as if, again, amazing book, incredible. This book, A Blood and Bone number 2, I should mention. So this is the book that follows the previous book I put up there, A Time of Dread. The thing I loved about this book was just the highlighting of the romance relationship in this book between two great characters, Riv and Drem. And I'm a big romance fan. Those of you who know me, I love romance as part of the fantasy genre. It just provides me this element of realism, because I feel like romance love relationships are a big part of real life. And I crave that realism in my fantasy books. And maybe what I love the most about romance is that the characters had what I believe was like this very mature relationship, and their bonding was just wonderful to read about. They were just so relatable. Like I just really enjoyed this aspect of this book. And again, it was so well done. It does come in at number 9. So again, certainly all of John Gwynne's books make an impact on me. Just that the other ones did a bit more in terms of this overall ranking. And now we get to number 8 on my list of favorite John Gwynne books. This is where it all started. The origin book, the first book that John Gwynne wrote, Malice, book 1 in The Faithful and the Fallen. So this is where it all started. For those of you who love the universe of The Faithful and the Fallen, again, John Gwynne chose to begin the journey here. It's actually, a lot of people rank first books lowest on an author's, if they were going to do a ranking of an author's books. A lot of people tend to rank first books lower because, they say the authors improve with time, which normally that's the case. And certainly John Gwynne did. He started out as a great author. He's only ascending from there. Malice is one of my favorites, I think, because again, for those of you who know me, it is a bit slower paced. You get to know the characters, this great build up, and then the last third is just bonkers with action. And Gwynne really takes his time. He establishes characters. He makes you love them, and then fear for them later once the action ramps up. This is actually fabulous. And we talked about first books. Well, I think that I probably have a bit of a nostalgia always for first books in a favorite series, and Faithful Fallen is one of my favorite series because I think that introduction to the characters happens there, and Gwynne really makes you grow to care about the characters. And again, maybe there's some bias here and nostalgia, but I love this one. This is where I truly began to feel that John Gwynne was wowing me as a writer, because I'm someone who prefers not normally far more morally gray characters, and characters who are compelling but interesting, right? Even if they're horrible. And I'm not saying that Gwynne doesn't write interesting villains. So don't get me wrong, his villains are good, but his good characters are what I find that make me and a lot of his readers really love his work. So, for me, I actually started to love the characterization of all these really, really good people, despite wanting more morally ambiguous characters out of the main players. I don't know what that says about me, but yeah, I love those. I love those morally gray characters. This is a book that made me really remember how stellar a writer that John Gwynne is. And let's also talk about animal companions. Okay, so now animal companions isn't normally a trope that I necessarily look for or value, perhaps as high as other readers in my fantasy novels. It's more like nice to have, but not a necessity. But it's always a treat when it's done well, and this is amazing. Done so by John Gwynne. You fall in love with Storm the Wolven. But come on, let's talk about the Ravens in this series, in the whole series. Let's talk about Craft and Fetch, the talking Ravens. Like, wow. So there's some of my faves. So again, so many reasons to love this book, and it comes in at number 8 on my list. Now, let's turn to number 7, and it is still a Blood and Bone, and this is A Time of Courage. This comes in at number 7. This book just really grabbed me. I remember it just really, really sinking its hooks into me and not letting me go. And for whatever reasons, I think it's more my brain and how I absorbed this series. This is when the whole, the aspect of this war between gods really came almost full circle for me. And where you feel like the other characters, the moral characters, caught in this larger than life conflict, and you have all these gods, demigods, gods, and all these powerful magical creatures. But although it is a conflict essentially between good and evil, with these gods, it's more than that. These banished gods, I think it became, especially with the characters, it was much more of a hearts and mind battle than just this battle of creatures that are far more powerful than the mortals, and where everything's happening feeling like it's beyond the hero's control. I love that aspect. And the ending, wow. Now nothing can. I want to talk a little about John Gwynne's endings, period, because that is definitely one of his strengths as a writer. You think you're prepared for his endings? You never are. You never really are. You're never prepared for his endings. And I thought that after reading Wrath, one of the books in the Faithful Fallen, which I'll get to, I thought I was more prepared that, okay, John Gwynne's going to give you those endings that are just going to, I wasn't prepared. And as I said, I don't think you can be. John Gwynne has some, explosive endings, just fantastic. And this book was no exception. Okay, coming in number 6, we have Valor, book 2 of the Faithful and the Fallen. Now, John Gwynne really raises the stakes in this book. And you can actually see as well, as I said, he started off as a brilliant writer, and you can see that the writing just improves, exponentially. But in terms of the book, the stakes raised. I felt like the stakes were raised so much, and you see some of your favorite characters they experience like the real horror of war and torture, but the ending in Valor just leave you in tears, right? This book is just full of action and doom and prophecy, and I think the lines between good and evil are even more clearly drawn here in this book, when it comes to whose side, is the side is not the good side versus, the good side. But overall, this is a magnificent book, and this is when I think I realized that John Gwynne was definitely going to be one of my favorite authors. I think it's after reading this book that I really, really thought that, okay, if I keep reading this author, they're going to wind up in my top author echelon. So that's number 6, Valor. Number 5. Again, this is my subjective ranking. I'm sure a lot of people will be like, what? It's that low? I can't believe it. No way. And this is the book by Gwynne I just finished reading. And I will say that this is part of my favorite series from him now. I didn't think anything was ever going to supplant Faith from the Fallen as a series from by John Gwynne, but testament to how he's improving as a writer, and testament to how great he was already when he first wrote Malice, and where he is now. It's just, he's just fantastic. But this book, number 5 on my list of top John Gwynne books, is The Fury of the Gods. This is book 3 in the Bloodsworn. I just recently put a review of this on Goodreads and on Before You Go blog. A shout out to Beth Tabler and the wonderful Before You Go blog crew. Before You Go blog, the blog site for fantasy horror sci-fi, where I'm also just an editor. I just put a review up of this book in the last few days. This is just, it is amazing. This is the final book in Bloodsworn, and I won't say too much. Please, I encourage you to go read my review overall, but this was extremely satisfying, and it showcases, and I said in my review, it showcases Gwynne's ability to untangle and reconcile all these plot lines and bring them together in a really harmonious way, you're wrapping up all these plot threads, and especially all the blood feuds that they start out in the beginning of the series, and then you get the conclusion, and wow. So when you have these plot threads, especially these blood feuds, throughout a series, and they originate in the first book, and you have to wrap them up in a satisfying way by the third book in a trilogy, chef's kiss on how John Gwynne did that. This entire series is just wow. It's just masterclass. Absolutely love it. And but yeah, it was a great conclusion. It's one of the best conclusions to a trilogy I ever read, and yet still, it comes in at number 5 in my overall favorites for in terms of John Gwynne's books. So number 5, Fear of the Gods, book 3 in the Bloodsworn. Number 4. Oh boy, Wrath. Wrath is wow. Wrath, number 4 on my list of top favorite John Gwynne books. It's also coincidentally book 4 in The Faithful and the Fallen. This is the concluding book in the series of The Faithful and the Fallen. Again, I'm not trying to give away spoilers here. This is just a book where, our heroes, they seem like they have nothing left, You wonder how they're going to keep on after the events of the previous book. They just seem to be absolutely gutted, but the courage and the fortitude, they keep fighting. And the heroism is just awe-inspiring. What I also loved about this book, I absolutely couldn't get enough of, is you had these characters who didn't really know each other completely and know where the other person stood. But then they come to have this true understanding. And that was great to see them have that by the end of the series, especially considering the fates of some of them. And there was just some absolutely wonderful, wonderful character moments. I'm a character-driven reader, and the character moments here just wow, again, resonated with me and will stay with me forever. I also love the depth of the world building and the lore and Gwynne is excellent at that aspect as well. I love the aspect of the ties he made from the beginning of the series and just paying everything off. And I just kept thinking that he really stuck the landing here. And after this is the first series he completed. So, you often judge an author in terms of are they going to be your favorite in how they wrap up a series. And this was the first one that he did, and it was done in fine fashion. One other thing I want to say about this book is I love the fact that, and this is more overall in the series, that the main characters, the ones who are still alive anyways, they all get their proper page time in every book in the series. And that's something that I personally really like. When I think about A Song of Ice and Fire, the unfinished Song of Ice and Fire, and which is one of my favorite series of all time. It is my favorite series of all time that's not finished. And if you watch my video about my favorite fantasy series of all time and why I'm sad, I talk about A Song of Ice and Fire because technically I couldn't officially rank it because it's not finished. But yeah, and A Song of Ice and Fire, if I had a criticism of that series, there's so many characters you love. You want to give them their page time, but sometimes there's some characters that may not be as important to you that seem to get a lot of page time, and that of course is a personal thing. But yeah, what I loved about Wrath and the entire Faithful Fallen is those characters you love, they get their page time, you get satisfying resolution to their arcs, and it's just awesome. So that's number 4, Wrath. And fittingly, although you might think it's a bit backwards because you figure that the last book in the series would even be better than the best. Ruin. I've talked to so many John Gwynne fans that, again, of all his books, I think, other than if you take the Bloodsworn out of John Gwynne's body of work and you talk about essentially the books set in this other universe that is not the same as the one where Bloodsworn occurs. Ruin is the book that your mouth is just hanging on the floor. Like there is, so one of John Gwynne's, one of the things he's known for most is his battle scenes. He is a master of battle scenes. He is a master of writing battle scenes, ancient combat, the shield wall. No one writes the shield wall like a few authors, and one of them is John Gwynne. I just want to quickly put up, because the wonderful Shad stopped by. Hey, PL, what's up, Shad? Good to see you. And he says that he loved Wrath too. Yep, Wrath is amazing. So thanks again for stopping by, Shad. Really appreciate it. Shad's a great fellow. I had the honor to meet in person. And he says, Faithful Fallen is my favorite John Gwynne series. Yeah. And I can sort of see that. I never thought that the Faithful Fallen could ever not be my favorite John Gwynne series until I finished Bloodsworn. So, but yeah, Ruin. There's a duel in Ruin where you get the perspective of this duel from 3 different characters. And I'm not trying, I don't want to give away, even a little bit. I feel as these books are so magnificent, I don't want to spoil anything. But there's a duel between these opponents, and you get 3 different perspectives of this duel, and it means a lot to each of the 3 of these characters. That's all I'm going to say. But just, I have never read, that was the first time in fantasy, because to be on the edge of your seat with these 3 different POVs about the same thing, and with even characters, these characters not involved in the duel, right? It just, there's some characters that weren't directly involved in the duel, but when you read it from their perspective, it's still so meaningful, and so it's just incredible. Ruin, for the longest time, this was my favorite John Gwynne book, and I didn't think anything was ever going to replace it, or at least I couldn't foresee it. The nice thing about continuing to read is that you always find another great book. Another great book is all around the corner. Another great book from a great fantasy author is usually around the corner as well. So, but Ruin for a long time held my heart as my favorite John Gwynne book. And Shad said the duel is one of my favorite films. Yeah, it was just, Shad, when you've read it, right? So yeah, just fantastic. Number 3, Ruin. And now we get into the top 2. Shad also says the only one who compares to duel is First Law, and we know what you're talking about. For now, I don't want to presume. For me, Shad, it involves the Bloody Nine. Is that the duel you're talking about? It might be. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing here. So, but in any case, yeah, Ruin number 2. Wow, that duel. Sorry, Ruin number 3 and number 2 on my list of top of the books by John Gwynne. Now we're almost at the top of the pile. It is Shadow of the Gods. Shadow of the Gods. Let me tell you what makes this book my number 2. The world building, I think, put this over the edge. I think that I'm a world building geek, and Gwynne really delivered on this aspect at another level. I love the world building in his previous series, but this is something different. Cities named for the bones of gods. This is just the world building here is just the world is dark and it's grim, but it's beautiful. Something about the world of Vigrid in this series, just like, and reading the first book, it just did something for me. I was enthralled. Had me within the first few chapters. Yeah, I was there. So, and of course, the world building here, as John Gwynne does, it's very organic. It's woven so nicely through the novel. And let me talk about another great hallmark of the Gwynne book, of course, which is the characters. And I talked about this before. John Gwynne gives you these characters you cannot help fall in love with. You're hopelessly in love with them. There's nothing you can do, and you live and die on their every cut in battle and their every personal tragedy. And this introduces us to who I believe is perhaps my favorite fantasy character of all time. Maybe Orca, Skull Splitter, and that's saying something considering the likes of characters like Glokta from Joe Abercrombie First Law, or Jalen Kendith from Mark Lawrence's Red Queen's War, or Lysier from The Wards of Light and Shadow by Janie Wirtz. I mean, Orca, we first get to meet Orca in this book, and I don't think I've not spoken to a reader who has read this series that Orca is not one of their favorite characters ever. So I think that alone just puts this on just that upper tier of John Gwynne's work. It is just absolutely amazing. Shadow of the Gods, he starts off the series this way. It was just like almost like a breath of fresh air. It was just fantastic. Shadow of the Gods, Chef Kiss, number 2 on my favorite John Gwynne books list. Shadow of the Gods. And Shad says, I'm reading Fear of the Gods. You're in for a real treat, Chad. It is fast. You like the fast-paced stuff. I'm pretty sure it's fast. You don't have time to draw breath. It's fast, man. Like, it battle after battle, vengeance. People get their comeuppance. It's yeah. And he says Orca was a very good character. Yeah, Orca for me was one of the best characters I've ever read in fantasy. She was just absolutely amazing. And that is a very good tie-in with Orca to be speaking of my number 1 favorite John Gwynne book, and that is The Hunger of the Gods. And this book is brilliant in every way. And as a second book, some people say that second books in trilogies, you might suffer letdown. There's zero letdown whatsoever in this series. I feel it's the best written book of the series, and I feel it's actually perhaps John Gwynne's best written book from a technical standpoint. It's just my subjective opinion. But I will say this, found family dynamics. John Gwynne's one of the best fantasy writers with this stuff. He really pulls your heartstrings. He puts this disparate and desperate group of people together. They get bonded through their trials and tribulations. You come to love that bond. Then he rips some of them away. It's always tragic, and he gives you heartache, and you're gonna love it. You're gonna love having your heart broken and stomped on. You, as you watch the characters have their hearts broken and stomped on, you're gonna reader feel the same way. And this book is so much about that, and it just puts things over the top. But ultimately, I think the defining thing with this book for me is that the ending of this book, other than perhaps Peril's Gate and Wars of Light and Shadow by the incredible Jenny Wards, who is actually my favorite fantasy author, the ending of this book affected me in a way that rarely has any book, fantasy or otherwise, affected me. This book just ruined me. You're almost like you're reading and you're going, no. And when, like, for a fantasy book to do that to you, where you've totally lost yourself and it's real, it feels real. That is, what a skill. How skilled is John Gwynne to be able to do that? So this book, The Hunter of the Gods, the second book of Bloodsworn, for me, is my favorite John Gwynne fantasy book out of the 10 that I've read by him so far. That's the 10 novels he's published. John Gwynne will always have a place of honor on my fantasy bookshelves. He's one of my favorite authors. I make no bones about it. He's incredible. I will read everything that he writes. I love his work. Again, if you want, the things he's known for, battle scenes predominantly perhaps is the thing that he's known for most. But again, I say I'm a character-driven reader, and what he does with his characters to make you care that much about the characters and to just basically, break down and weep over the things that happen to them when things don't go well for them, or even when they're taken off the board. That is a rare skill, and very few writers are able to make you do that to the level that John Gwynne does in fantasy, and so kudos to him for doing that. So that's my top list of John Gwynne's books, and number one was The Hunger of the Gods. I really do hope that you read John Gwynne's books. If you're a fantasy writer, you like the epic stuff, you love amazing battle scenes. John Gwynne, he's a reenactor. He's traveled to reenact these ancient battles. He's an expert with, of course, ancient combat weapons. He brings that authenticity and gravitas I talk about with certain writers, such as the Malice Camerons, that have that background. And he just writes some of the best battle scenes anywhere in fantasy. And he also writes some of the best characters that you absolutely fall in love with, and you will be utterly crushed if and when they don't make it. So, John Gwynne, amazing author. Hope you enjoyed this list. I want to say thank you to Shad for dropping by. Thank you so much, Shad, for dropping by and just joining, in chat. Shad's an awesome guy, very discerning reader, great guy. So thanks so much for stopping by. And thank you humbly for saying great job on this. And I'm I am very much looking forward to seeing what John Gwynne writes next. So once again, P.L. Stewart here, John King Saga 7847 signing off. I'll be back tomorrow for a series of amazing interviews, 6 elemental interviews on Sunday, the 5th of January, 2025. We're going to have some brilliant authors, including the amazing Dirk Ashton, iconic indie author of Paternus. You're going to see Adam Bishop, a very up-and-coming young indie author, actually Canadian, and from there where I'm living now. Loved his last book. He kind of just sent it to me, and loving his series. He's got 2 books out right now. A Voice of No Quarter. Check that series out for fancy. And to finish it off, I have, the stupendous Dr. Philip Chase, author of the Adan trilogy, dear friend. He's, obviously one of my favorite human beings out there, and he's coming on the channel in the evening interview. I cannot wait to catch up with Philip. So it's always a good day when you're talking to Philip. So So once again, take care, everyone. And yep, you too, Shad. Have a wonderful day. And we will see you again next time.